Wow. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I just realized that I was on mute. I am so sorry. Thank you for tuning in to the Boston Sports Summit. My name is Tim, and show is presented by the Grid Network, where the big show that is able to talk about all four Boston sports. And yes, I want to talk about the big story right away. That is Jerod Mayo is fired. That is the big headline news, as you can see below. Jerod Mayo has been let go by the New England Patriots as head coach. And it really has been a wild 72 hours, if not a wild season. And then if you even want to go further back, a wild 5 years, something where I can't even comprehend how far this team has fallen. Right. It has been unbelievable in that sense. And when it comes to Mayo getting fired, I have been on this for the last 2.5, maybe even 3 months. And it's not that I like wanting to call for people to get fired and, people losing their jobs. I totally understand. Like it's their livelihood. I get it. But at the same time, it's also about calling out incompetence and calling out that they're not fit. They're not the right fit for the job. It was that simple when it came to Jerod Mayo. And that's where I really had a hard time with a lot of people talking about how, Jerod Mayo, it was his first year. He should have been head coach, or he should have had another year to build his culture and his program. And I'll get more to those people in a little bit. But for right now, Jerod Mayo, I want to start from the beginning with him. He became the linebackers coach, inside linebackers coach for the Patriots in 2019, right? And in 2019, he also went on that infamous Israel trip with Robert Kraft, other coaches, other players on the Patriots. And that is where Robert Kraft said, quote unquote, that he eventually tabbed Jerod Mayo to lead this team. And so he starts coaching in 2020. Then after his second year as assistant coach, there was a story that came out in the Houston Chronicle. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it talked about how great Jerod Mayo would be as a head coach down the line. And so it kind of freaked Robert Kraft out because the Houston Texans wanted to interview Jerod Mayo for their vacant head coaching spot in 2022. And so, and Robert Kraft panicked. Now, when it comes to the story, I'm not 100% sure if that was Jerod Mayo or if that was his agent and his agent acted on Jerod Mayo's behalf and Mayo had no idea. The planting of the story was kind of suspicious in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, the story came out, whether who said it or not. And Robert Kraft kind of freaked out because he gave Jerod Mayo a contract reworded that said he would be the next head coach of the Patriots. It was that simple. So he's through 2 seasons as an assistant coach, as an inside linebackers coach. And then, so Mayo, to his credit, was a little overly ambitious. I think that's a big thing right there. He was. And especially with the fact that Houston Chronicle story came out. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to knock him for that. Hey, the guy knows what he wants. He sees a path to being a head coach, and he's going to take it. Why wouldn't you, right? It doesn't matter. But then in November 12th of 2023, now this is the big thing. This is why I have been, I don't want to say the word attacking because it sounds too harsh, but why I have been trying to hold Jerod Mayo and this Patriots staff accountable from the beginning. Because November 12th, 2023, was the day that the Patriots lost miserably to the Colts over in Germany. And that was also where it was reported by Tommy Curran, quote, "When they came out of Germany, conversations I had this week made it very clear, underlined, that a decision was made." He keeps going on to say, quote, "They were going to play out the string, and at the end of the year, there would be a parting of the ways for a variety of reasons," meaning Belichick and the Patriots. Parting of the ways. Belichick was done. November 12th, 2023 is the day that Robert Kraft knew he was done with Bill Belichick and that he would have somebody else. Okay? So then, obviously, fast forward, they've let Bill play out the rest of the season. January 11th of last year, we're almost coming up on the full year of this. Belichick was fired after 23 seasons in New England. And this is part two as to why I've been knocking Gerard Mayo, knocking this Patriots team, and saying that Gerard needs to be let go and needs to get fired. Wolf needs to get fired. Every clean house, basically, is because January 11th, Belichick gets fired. January 12th, Gerard Mayo is hired. One freaking day. Okay? So there was no due diligence done. Zero. And when it comes to the November 12th and the loss to the Colts in Germany, that means Gerard Mayo had the rest of November, December. Actually, I could even go back further if you want. When that contract got reworked, that was in 2022. So he basically had 2022, the rest of it, whenever that contract was reworded and signed, the rest of 22, all of 23, including the day that Belichick was officially done. See ya. November 12th, play out the stretch. Belichick gets fired. Less than 24 hours later, Mayo gets hired. And remind me, how many offensive coaches did Gerard Mayo interview when he got the job? Oh, that's right. 12. 12 different offensive coaches that he interviewed, in which case and they landed on Alex Van Pelt, who was an Elliott Wolf guy. They had to rely on Elliott Wolf's connections from his time at Green Bay and Cleveland to get a competent offensive coordinator. And I'm going to say this. I just want to put this in the notes, for everybody to say. I hated Van Pelt. I thought his play calling blew. I thought it was more Drake May getting better than it was Alex Van Pelt. And not for nothing, I was wrong. I still believe that May improved because of his talent and his understanding of the game. But when it comes to which coordinators and, did the best, it was clearly Van Pelt. Gerard Mayo, no. DeMarcus Covington, no. Van Pelt was the best of the big three in terms of the coaching staff. So I will admit I was wrong. Okay. Doesn't mean that Van Pelt was, great and that he should stay. No, I'm just saying that, listen, Van Pelt did his job. He helped Drake May adapt to the league. Now, there's still a lot for May to improve upon, but to Van Pelt, for my previous bashing of you, I shouldn't have gone that hard. All right? You were the better of the big three. But back to Gerard Mayo. It took 2.5 years, or a year and a half, if you want to say, to go to not have a staff ready to go. And you knew by November that you were going to be the next guy, all intents and purposes. But that was a done deal. You don't think Robert came down and said to you, hey, Bill is done? And I mean, from what the reports that came out later on in the 2023 season, Gerard Mayo was walking around like he was the cock of the walk. He had that baseball bat. It sounded like he was Tom Cruise from A Few Good Men, but and he felt emboldened to call out the offense and call out all this stuff. So Gerard Mayo knew that he was the next guy in line, and it took 12 offensive coordinators. So again, talking about just from the beginning, the off the field stuff at the very beginning of this, right? And then you get into all the nonsense that happened on the field, okay? All the nonsense that happened on the field from saying that Drake May was the guy at the start of training camp to then starting Jacoby Brissett week 1, or that Drake May outplayed Brissett in the training camp, and then you start Jacoby Brissett week 1. And again, we won, but still, you win against your word, saying how whoever outplays whoever is going to get the start. And and there was a lot going on. I mean, you had the report that literally just came out earlier today talking about the fact that Gerard Mayo walked all the way back to the back of the plane to allegedly hang out with the boys when they flew back from Arizona. Now, again, I think that story is not 100% accurate because I don't know if he went to the back of the plane to talk to the guys to figure out kind of why they sucked against the Cardinals and why they played so bad coming off a bye week, or if the report, like the report says, they went and played cards. Again, that's all alleged. But then you had Mike Giardi of the Boston Sports Journal come out with an article yesterday that talked about the dysfunction of this team stemming from its head coach. Because Mike Giardi put several quotes in there that I just have to get out there. Mike Giardi goes, "One vet told me, quote, I lost faith we were headed in the right direction. When? In the spring. Why? Quote, felt like they, as in the coaching staff, were making it up as they went along. It was amazing how one day it would be this and then the next. Something completely different," end quote. Just changing things up on the fly. Another quote goes on to say that one coach, this kind of fits more to me, and I'll talk about the off-the-field stuff in a second, but one coach described Jelani Tavai's verbal critique of the fan base as, quote, crazy, noting that, quote, while he had his heart in the right place, end quote, he turned an unsuccessful team, quote, into an unlikable one. The front office had a number of issues with the coaches. First and foremost, they believed the younger players on the roster hadn't grown and developed nearly enough. And I'll talk about Elliott Wolf and what he said much later on in the show. So stick around for that because, again, nerds in sports, man. Gotta love them. And then lastly, the last, I thought, big quote from Mike Giardi's Boston Sports Journal article was, there was a feeling amongst some of the coaches that I talked to that the front office didn't get them the right players. Quote, what's the line? Chicken salad out of chicken bleep? Yeah, that was us. So just total dysfunction. And you and I watched that product on the field every single Sunday that they played. So again, the dysfunction or the on-the-field product sucked. And it was obvious. I mean, I posted, third and fourth down conversions against the Cardinals. Look at this. No. 4th and 1, they finally gained it, but that was close to not getting completed. And then no. Like garbage. You also had Christian Gonzalez not lined up on Cooper Kupp and or Puka Nacua at all. or excuse me, you had them lined up for a handful. You had your best corner lined up on their third best receiver. What was that about? Why? Because you wanted to play more of a zone game? I'm sorry, but do you know how cornerbacks play? Do you know how elite cornerbacks play? They line up against the best guy. Darrelle Revis lined up against Megatron, Randy Moss, the best guy. It didn't matter what they were doing. It was, that's my guy. Ty Law, that's my guy. You know? So on the field product, Matt just blew. And we all knew that. And then you want to talk about the off the field shenanigans. Here, look. All the quotes. I posted this, 2 weeks ago? I said the same exact thing. January, overusing the nickname Thunder. April, burn some cash. Walks that back. Call it a rookie mistake. August, says the best player will play. May outplay Brissett, but didn't play. Week 7, calls Patriots soft. Week 12, once those guys cross the white lines, there's nothing I can do for them after the 34-15 loss to Miami. And then in week 15, you said it, I didn't, when asked about Patriots didn't use May as a runner against Arizona. I mean, Gerard, and the funniest part about it was he constantly said these things, and then the very next day on EEI, walked them back. Okay? He always walked it back. And then when somebody would question him and said, Gerard, you keep saying all these things. You keep doing all these things. And you keep walking them back. Like, what's going on? He goes, it's a rookie mistake. I'll be better next year. You know, the coaching stuff, I'll be better next year. It's one thing to say that and to then get the opportunity to move on to the next year. But again, here's the thing. You need to prove here and now that you know what you're doing. You need to show us that, hey, okay, listen, I said all these things. I get it. I, didn't call this play right. I didn't call this situation right. I didn't do this right. I get it. But look, after our bye week 15, look at how I did this. 16, look at how I did that. 17, I did it this way. I said things this way. And then week 18, look, like that's what you hope can happen. But it just was never the case. It was never the case with Gerard Mayo. And so, myself, many of you Pats Nation out there, were calling for his head, especially after the Week 17 game against the Chargers that yours truly was at. And don't get me wrong, I had a blast because I was inside. I was inside a suite. I was very fortunate enough to get those tickets, and it was fun. It was fun being at Gillette. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I mean, hey, you can't beat free food and free drinks, unless you go outside the suite. But still, it was a fun time. It really was. And it just so happened that I was in the suite next to the Spanos and the Chargers ownership, in which case, listen, they won and they my dog for you, Eden. They not only won, but they got into the playoffs based off of it, which I, along with some of us in the suite, tipped our glass to them and congratulated them because they're going to the playoffs. They did the right thing. They did their due diligence in interviewing all the different coaching candidates, all the different people. Even though they wanted Jim Harbaugh, they went through a full multi-week process and landed on Jim Harbaugh. And look at how they're doing. And trust me, we're going to talk about the coaching process here with New England very shortly. But that also led to the fire Mayo chants, the booing at the end of the game. And, of course, some of the players weren't too happy about it. Dietrich Wise, the week before actually, called us spoiled, which royally pissed me off because if anybody is spoiled, it's the players who have the privilege to call us spoiled. Because here's the difference between a good fan base and a not good fan base. And it's kind of simple, really, if you think about it. It's the fact that a good fan base actually cares about their team. Whether they're doing great, whether they're doing bad, they care. And you know how they care? They show up to the games or they boo your ass. Okay? That's how you know that they care. Whereas a bad fan base, in my opinion, are the fan bases that are just like, oh, it's Sunday. Oh, yeah, I got tickets to the team, but hey, win or lose, I really don't care. Hey, oh, they had a good season. Oh, good for them. And I can guarantee you there are plenty of those fan bases throughout the NFL. You might have a couple fans sprinkled in there that actually care, but there are plenty of those fans that are just like, my team's there. They're from my hometown or whatever. They're my team, but whatever. That's called apathy there, Dietrich. Okay? That is a bad fan base right there. So the fact that we care and we're actually booing shows that we care, right? Secondly, David Andrews actually came not to Wise's defense, but was like, listen, do I hate the boos? Yes, I do. But I also understand it. So that's why, I understand it because they want a good product. And what's wrong with wanting a competitive team that has a chance of making the playoffs? That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for 6 Super Bowls in 20 years. I'm asking for a chance to compete for a Super Bowl because I understand the greatest coach of all time, gone. The greatest quarterback of all time, been gone for the last 5 years. I wonder what coincided there, why we tanked. And then, of course, you have Jelani Tavai, who this dumb SOB friggin' goes on EEI and not only curses at the fans because we're booing Gerard Mayo, but then had the gall to go onto EEI and call us out. I have the clip. Take a listen.
Of yours who were frustrated that fans were booing. Does that bother you?
I was, of course. I think. I don't know. I don't know. I was frustrated. I definitely think I told a fan to quiet down in a non polite way.
But can you see how, can you see as a player, and I've played before when fans are booing and they're calling for coaches' jobs, can you see, I get why fans are doing that when we put a product out that doesn't look that good rather than being, going kind of what Dietrich Wise said and going, all right, these, fans tend to be a little bit spoiled. But do you see the side that the fans are coming from when the product looks bad?
I don't know. There's a reason why they're fans, everybody can say what they think that we should be doing, but in the long end, they're not qualified to do what Mayo is doing, or whatever the Pats are doing. They're fans, and I appreciate them at times, but sometimes they just gotta know their place and just understand that it's a work in progress. Rome wasn't built in one day, and there's been like I said before in another interview, there's been teams that have shown,
Rome wasn't built in a day, and that it's that we're not qualified and that we don't know and that we have to stay in our lane. Does this dude understand who funds his paycheck? Yes, it's us going to the games, us caring about this team, and you have the gall to call us out like that? I mean, dude, What is your problem? This is the thing. This is why, again, I made this tweet after Dietrich Wise. I never thought that, I never really thought about it until now, obviously. But my God, are these players spoiled? Because what do they think this is? That, oh, everything is awesome? Listen, right? Yeah, hey, everything is great because I put on my chin strap and my shoulder pads. I got to play football. So that's why, hey, see, everything is great. You should be cheering for us even when we get our ass kicked 40-7. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable that these players have this kind of mentality. And it's obviously not all of them because, like I said, David Andrews, love the guy. I knew he was, a good guy from the beginning because he gets it. He understands what it's like understands the fan perspective. Again, all it is we just want a good product. We want you to be competing for at least the playoffs, bare minimum. You should have been, one of those in the hunt teams. You had the talent to do it, but you couldn't. You absolutely couldn't. And it was disgraceful watching these guys come out and attack us as fans. Just awful. Just awful. And then the last reason why, I felt like Mayo should have been let go was obviously this is a crucial time in the Patriots organization. Not only do we have the number 4 pick and a top 5 pick for the second year in a row, but we also have Christian Gonzalez, Christian Barmore, who hopefully, I hope he gets 100% healthy. I hope he, is able to come back and play for a very long time wearing a New England Patriots jersey. So my thoughts and prayers are continuing to be with Barmore and what he's dealing with. The other guy we need to build around is Keon White. Of course, he had his ups and downs. He was good. He was bad. But he's still very young, very, pretty raw, but he's a beast. If you just let that dude loose, he can get after the quarterback. And then the last guy that we need to build around is Drake May. Drake May. I mean, he's 22 years old. And was he perfect this season? God, no. But was he good? Did he show flashes of what he can do and the skill talent that he brings? Absolutely. And so to have the dysfunction that we had this season with Jerod Mayo as the head man, I'm sorry. We cannot run this back. We cannot run this back. And Jerod Mayo, in his own right, did enough to get himself, did enough to have himself be fired. And that's not to say that Jerod Mayo cannot be a great head coach down the road. To be honest, I hope he is. I truly do. I want him to go out, learn from his mistakes, understand kind of where he went wrong, what he needs to improve upon, get some more coaching experience. And then, and only then, can then do I hope that Jerod Mayo learns from his mistakes and is able to succeed off of that. The other thing I want to get to, though, when it comes to Mayo is I want to get to, before I talk about Robert Kraft and how he screwed over Mayo, I want to get to some of the pundits that have come out and said it's unfair for Robert Kraft to fire Jerod Mayo this early. Here is former Patriot tight end Rob Gronkowski, and I'm going to follow it up with Ryan Clark's comments. So here's Rob Gronkowski on Fox Sports.
Already, Jerod Mayo out after one season as the Patriots head coach.
I was shocked by that, and to happen that soon was a shocker to a lot of people, especially here at the desk. We were all surprised by that. I think it was unfair to Coach Gerard Mayo. I mean, he had never had the chance to develop as a head coach. He was just a rookie himself in that department. And if you judge a coach by their first year, that's really not appropriate. I mean, Jimmy Johnson, you went 1-15 your first year, and then you won a couple Super Bowls after that. I mean, he really...
Hey, we got to go to break.
Oh, no, I mean...
All right, we're going to keep talking about that.
Yeah,
Much more in the OT.
So the ending of it was kind of funny how they break Rob Gronkowski up. But, you know, and I want to get to Ryan Clark in just a second. But to Gronk's example, Jimmy Johnson, right? With Gerard Mayo, it's so funny how everybody wants to compare Gerard Mayo and his coach and him getting fired after a 4-13 season to all the other great head coaches that got off to awful starts. Rob Gronkowski compared to Jimmy Johnson. You want to hear Jimmy Johnson's resume before he got hired by the Dallas Cowboys? Let me read it. Won a national championship as a player in 1964, and that was in Arkansas. So, you know, they're, again, Gerard Mayo played in the league, so that levels out. But then after he graduated, Jimmy Johnson was an assistant coach from 65 to 69 for multiple schools. He was a D-line coach at Oklahoma from 70 to 72. He was the defensive coordinator at Arkansas from 73 to 76, was the assistant head coach in D.C. at Pitt in 77 and 78, was Oklahoma State's head coach in 79 to 1983, and then he became the head coach of Miami from 84 to 88, where he won a national title and went to another national title game as well. Then he got hired as the head coach of the Cowboys. I don't know. That's kind of an impressive resume, right? Here's Ryan Clark on ESPN talking about why Mayo should not have been fired.
RC, did the firing of Mayo make sense to you?
I find it hard to believe that firing Gerard Mayo was harder than firing Bill Belichick last year for Robert Kraft. Also, too, Bill Belichick was 5-11 in his first year, but you found the patience. And the next year, obviously, Tom Brady comes in and you go 11-5. And on the other side of that, this is the team that was inherited by Gerard Mayo that only won 4 games last year. A team that had an empty cupboard of talent because of what the last general manager did as the New England Patriots picker of talent. And so to me, I don't feel like you gave him enough of an opportunity to show you that he was ready to coach. And this is the team that's going into an offseason where they can go out and acquire pieces to add to their quarterback, Drake.
And listen, part of what he said is 100% factual. Listen, Bill Belichick kind of gave whoever was going to be the next guy a lot of work that they would have to do. Okay? But when Robert Kraft in his press conference said it was the hardest thing that he had to do, it's because Robert Kraft made it so personal. And I do want to get to that in just a minute, but I just getting back to the point, because everybody has discussed, you know, that, Dan Campbell, you know, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, like comparing Gerard Mayo. Two things can happen at the same time. Number one, Gerard Mayo was dealt an awful hand when it came to this roster and this team. The other thing is that Gerard Mayo was wildly inexperienced, wildly incompetent when it came to building a culture with this team and showing signs that, hey, we're on the right track. You know, when you want to compare him to Tom Landry and all of that, it's not the case. Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants from 54 to 60 and played in the NFL. You know, he had the best, or one of the best defensive units in the league for 3 straight years, winning 1 of 3 NFL championships that he went to, and then became the head coach of the brand new organization that was the Dallas Cowboys. Don't forget that. The Cowboys were just founded when Tom Landry got the job. So obviously, they're not going to have a great team to start off with. Chuck Noll, drafted by the Browns and won 2 NFL championships while playing 6 seasons in Cleveland. Paul Brown, the head coach of the Browns, used him as one of his messenger guards to send play calls to the quarterback, beginning it with Otto Graham. Paul Brown said that Chuck Noll, quote, could have called the plays himself without any help from the bench. That's how smart he was. Again, high praise from, you could argue, the godfather of, or one of the godfathers of NFL and football. But Chuck Noll then was the D-line coach for the Chargers for 2 seasons, DC and DB's coach for 3 seasons in San Diego. Baltimore Colts, DC and DB's coach for 3 seasons, and then became the head coach of the Steelers. Already went through Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick. Talk about a resume here. Special assistant for the Colts in 75. Assistant special teams coach with the Lions in 76. Wide receiver tight ends coach with the Lions in 77. Broncos assistant and defensive assistant in 78. Giants special teams defensive assistant 79. Giants special teams linebacker coach 80 to 84. Giants DC 85 to 90. Was the head coach of the Browns. Took a 3-13 team to a 6-10 team in year 1, and then improved all 4 years that he was in Cleveland to an 11-5 record by 94 with 1 playoff victory. And then, of course, in the final year, Art Modell announces to the world during this early on in the season that they're moving to Baltimore. And obviously that threw everybody for a loop. So I don't necessarily blame Bill there. Not to say he wasn't good, but regardless. He was a Pats assistant head coach and DB's coach in 96. Jets assistant head coach DC in 97, 99. Then became the head coach of the Pats. Talk about a resume. And then people want to talk about Dan Campbell. After he played for 10 years as a tight end and won the Super Bowl in his final year, he was a coaching intern with the Dolphins in 2010. The Dolphins tight end coach from 11 to 15, interim head coach for the Dolphins in 15, Saints assistant head coach and tight ends coach from 16 to 20, and then became the Detroit Lions. Like, what I'm trying to get at is all of these coaches that people want to compare Gerard Mayo to had resumes, resume on top of resume, that there was no reason, like, you cannot compare the two. You know, Gerard Mayo, like Nathaniel Hackett and others, were just flat out not ready. And they got exposed and, quite honestly, deserve to be fired. Okay? It's not hard to understand this. It really isn't. Okay? And, you know, and this kind of bothers me too, but I'm going to, just the fact that people want to be like, oh, you know, Gerard Mayo should have got more time. And people want to bring race into this. It's not. Because when you look at head coaches who were fired after 1 year from 2011 to 2024, 13 total guys were fired after 1 season, some of which were fired less than 1 season. Okay, fired midway through or later on. 8 of those 13 were white. Like, we don't have to talk about race when it comes to this. It's just about, is he doing the job, and is he doing the job well? And Gerard Mayo, I'm sorry, was not. I truly do hope he becomes extremely successful one day. I do. But it just was not the case. And yes, Robert Kraft screwed him over. I'm not going to deny that. He panicked when that story came out in the Houston Chronicle that he would make a great head coach one day and that Houston wanted to interview him. And then what happened was he wrote that he wrote that thing in his contract to say that he would be the next guy. And then, of course, Vrabel, or I shouldn't talk about Vrabel yet. Belichick gets fired January 11th, and without doing his due diligence, Robert Kraft skirts the Rooney Rule, doesn't do any outside interviews, and hires Gerard Mayo in less than 24 hours. Does that make sense to you? Because sure doesn't make sense to me. And this is why, yes, not only have I been hard on Gerard Mayo this season, but I have been extremely hard on Robert Kraft. Why? because there's no more barrier. It was Robert Kraft who has done everything to this point. And not for nothing, Robert Kraft also proved the point that it wasn't Bill Belichick's fault on all these things. Yes, Bill couldn't draft worth a damn, royally screwed up that 2019 draft when all we needed was a damn wide receiver. We had the pick of the litter. And we went with N'Keal friggin' Harry. We could have had A.J. Brown, who wanted to be a Patriot, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel. Hell, we could have got all four of those guys. If we could have redone our entire wide receiver room with the picks that we had and where they landed in the draft. Like that's where Bill Belichick screwed over whoever was going to be the next head coach. The reason why I got angry is because Robert Kraft did not do his due diligence on Jerod Mayo. And that is just wildly inexcusable. Wildly inexcusable. And don't forget, too, that a couple days before Mike Vrabel got fired, which was on January 9th, he got fired by the Titans. A day or two before, Robert Kraft comes out and says, I would love it for Mike Vrabel to be our next head coach. And then all of a sudden he becomes available. And I think Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft pooped themselves because they're like, we were not expecting this. Tennessee should not have fired Vrabel. But they did. And he became available. And then they let go of Bill. And basically, without skipping a beat, said to Jerod, you're our guy. Not him. Well, we're not going to even do our due diligence. You're our guy. Because don't forget, Ben Johnson also interviewed. Then he backed off. Ben Johnson went out and interviewed a couple of times, and he's like, nah, you know what? I'm going to stay in Detroit one more year. And look at how well he's doing. So the fact that Robert Kraft, who has been extremely cheap, I was talking with some friends on the Grid Network, who you guys need to check out the Grid Network if you haven't yet. Ton of great shows, ton of great content. But we were discussing Robert Kraft and his cheapness. And, it was thrown out there, mentioned that, the Patriots are, they fly under the radar type of cheap. And I'm like, no, again, they're my team, so I'm paying attention to them 24/7. But they don't fly under the radar cheap. They are boastful about their cheapness. They have been boastful about their cheapness since Bill Belichick was here. And you're telling me that Robert Kraft didn't play a role in that? Because for the 23 years, it was Belichick's cheap, Belichick is cheap. But now, oh my God, we actually have a full offseason where Belichick wasn't the guy. And guess what happened? The same effing story. Robert Kraft is cheap. The Patriots are the lowest spending team in the NFL over the last 10 years. You don't think that Bill Belichick was the only reason why the Patriots were cheap? Absolutely not. Part of the reason is Robert Kraft, because these owners nowadays want to treat these teams like a friggin' business. And I get it partially, but if you're a team that is able to spend money, why aren't you spending money? Why are you going to the best available free agent and saying, I see that every other team is giving you 5 and 125, but we are the Patriots. So we're going to give you 3 and 75 with incentives that'll get you to 105. How does that sound? Like, that sounds absurd. Like, no player, and especially no top player, is going to take that at all. And got a shout out from Barry Grant Jr., the guy, one of the co-founders of the Grid Network with the All Even podcast. Well said, 100%. Thank you, Barry. I appreciate that. But that's kind of where, again, just the cheapness factor comes in with the Patriots. And I almost feel like I'm talking about the same team when it comes to the Patriots and the Red Sox. These guys, I might be talking about two different teams, but they're thinking the exact same way. It's unbelievable to me. So, listen, I have given a lot of crap on Jerod Mayo tonight as to why he deserved to get fired. And I will not, and I will never forget that it wasn't solely Jerod Mayo's fault. It wasn't. Robert Kraft panicked in 2022 to give Jerod Mayo that option in his contract that says, you're going to be the next guy. And then when the team was just in the absolute worst position possible, they panicked. And they're like, Jerod, you're our guy. We promised you the job. You're our guy. Rather than giving Jerod the opportunity to, learn what it's like to run the room. Learn what it's like to play call on defense. He didn't even do that. He didn't even get that far. That was Steve Belichick. And now the report came out earlier today that Jerod Mayo wanted to promote DeMarcus Covington and demote the man who was doing the play calls. 2023, yeah, we sucked, but statistically, we had a top 10 defense in terms of DVOA. Guess who was making the play calls? Steve Belichick. So now that Jerod Mayo is the guy, and we were all told that, Steve and Jerod are buddy-buddy. Well, if they were so buddy-buddy, then why did Jerod want to demote the play caller that is coming off another 4-13 year, but had a top 10 defense in terms of DVOA? I mean, that's kind of crazy, don't you think? So Robert Kraft deserves just as much, if not more blame than Jerod Mayo does for putting Jerod Mayo in the situation. And again, even in his press conference, like Ryan Clark said, he doesn't understand why it was so difficult for him. Well, it was difficult for him because Jerod hiring head coaches, according to Robert Kraft, he makes it so personal that he equated it to choosing his wives. That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said, is I choose my head coaches like I choose my wives. That's an extremely personal comment. So yes, Robert Kraft deserves, if not more blame, for putting Jerod Mayo in this situation. And now I want to bring up the state of the New England Patriots, because as it stands, I'm sorry, but we are a joke of an organization. We are a joke of an organization that we used to make fun of. We used to make fun of the fact that the Jets had all these head coaches and all these quarterbacks. The Bills, oh my God, the laundry list of quarterbacks that the Bills had and coaches that ran through Buffalo when Belichick got the job in 2000. It's staggering. But, I mean, you want to talk about it, how to tank an all-time dynasty? You want to talk about how to tank an all-time dynasty? This is how you do it. From 2014, basically, I know I'm going further back than usual, but from 2014 to 23, Belichick's awful drafting. In 2020 offseason, you let the greatest of all time walk. The 2020 season, having no plan post-Brady, they signed Cam Newton as quarterback and were average during the COVID year. Had fans been allowed in the stands, could have been a little worse with how Cam Newton was playing, but still. 2021 draft Mac Jones at 15 overall. The 21 season, there was promise with Mac Jones and Josh McDaniels. It looked good. It was like, wow, All right, maybe Mac Jones doesn't have a noodle arm. Maybe Josh McDaniels is the savior, you could say, for this Patriots team. But then the 2022 offseason, Josh McDaniels gets hired by the Vegas Raiders as their head coach, allowing Kraft to allow Bill to sign Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, which pissed off Mac Jones, the fan base, and absolutely ruined the 2022 season due to the fact that those two boobs had never even seen the offensive side of the ball when it came to coaching, or legitimate coaching, I should say, not interns. And then the 2022 season, Mac Jones tanks hard. 2023 season, 4-13, fire Bill January 11th, hire Mayo on January 12th, the very next day. And there at the bottom, you can see Kraft got their team back. That was the big crux of why part of the reason why they wanted to bring Mayo in was because they knew they could boss him around, basically. And I don't mean boss him around like tell him what to do and all these things, but boss him around in terms of Belichick had sole control over everything. And then all of a sudden, now Gerard Mayo does. So now, all of a sudden, now you have to have Elliot Wolf as the GM. You have to have this scout, this coach, that coach. And Gerard Mayo just is right there, staying in his lane as the head coach. That's what Robert Kraft, was pumped about, that he got his team back. And frequent commenter, not Doug, comments, feels like Brady Belichick was a Patriots fan dream. Now we woke up and we're back to the 80s Patriots. You know what? I'm glad I missed the 80s Patriots, but except for obviously when we got demolished against the 85 Bears, we at least made the playoffs and the Super Bowl that year. But for the most part, you're right. Robert, Rod Rust and all the awful Patriot coaches that came before Belichick, that's where we're at right now. We are arguably back to reality. And, I understand why some people, especially older than me, want to call me spoiled, because my childhood, when we won our first championship when I was, 2002, I was 9 years old when we won our first, championship for the city of Boston in this 20-year run. So I grew up with excellence, basically. So that's why I understand why fans want to say and look at me, especially older, who, grew up here, and be like, oh, you're so spoiled. You don't understand. And I go, okay, yeah, I was spoiled. Like, I'm not going to deny that. Hell, I've seen 6 Patriot championships. I've seen 4 Red Sox championships, 2 Celtics championships, and 1 Bruins championship. What's wrong with wanting my team to compete for the playoffs and be a playoff contender every single year? Yeah, you're not going to be picking high up, but look at New England. Look at how we lasted for 20 years and having that late round draft almost every single year. Don't you think it kind of worked out? Don't you think it's kind of doable to do that? You just have to know how to manage your team and pray that key guys don't get injured when they do. But that's why the state of the Patriots right now, I mean, it's a total cluster. It is an absolute cluster that I never thought this dynasty could ever experience. And it did. And I'm including this in the dynasty because, not for nothing, these are all still Belichick guys. And Belichick went 4-13 in his final year. And we all could tell that, not for nothing, Bill still deserved to get fired. Don't tell me, don't try to rewrite history and say that Bill shouldn't have gotten fired, because you know what? He did. I just pulled it up there. It was 2013, 2014, all the way up until last offseason. Awful at drafting. Sure, he had some guys sprinkled in here and there that he hit on. Christian Gonzalez. Of course, now I'm blanking. But even still, Keon White. Like, he hit on some guys. I'm not going to deny that. But for the most part, he sucked. He just stopped caring. And the guys that he hired to scout in the front office sure as hell don't know how to scout. And I think it was pretty evident from this past draft when we drafted Jalen Polk over Ladd McConkey, who I wanted Ladd McConkey from the get-go. I was like, that is a Patriot right there through and through. Having watched him play in Georgia as a Gator fan, it was pretty easy to see that this is a future New England Patriot. And then he does what he does against us. Meanwhile, we have Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, who have caught a combined, 25 catches on the season. So it's just been a joke. The New England Patriots, like I mentioned earlier about how, Buffalo, all their head coaches and quarterbacks, Miami, the Jets, all their head coaches and quarterbacks since Belichick got hired in 2000. We're on the verge. Well, it's going to happen. I shouldn't say we're on the verge. It's going to happen that we are going to have 3 head coaches in 3 years, 5 offensive coordinators in 5 years, 6 starting quarterbacks in 5 years, and 7 if you include Joe Milton. I mean, you can, but that was basically a preseason game on Sunday. That was a preseason game. It had nothing to do with actual game. But you can still say 7 if you want. And again, this is the type of stuff we used to make fun of the rest of the AFC East for. It is. It is. And now we're that team. The state of the Patriots, it's crazy to me. And of course, because of Joe Milton, and listen, I was excited to watch Joe Milton, to watch Joe Milton play and the way he played. It was great to see. Totally loved it. Except for the fact he played too well, and Buffalo was playing 3D chess while we were playing checkers. Because while our players were, I think, trying to play for Mayo's sake and for themselves, for themselves, Buffalo was like, not only are we going to play our backups, but we're going to play part of our third stringers and practice squad because we really don't want you to get the number 1 overall draft pick. So while we were playing checkers, they were playing chess. And they won. Because the fact that we won that game, we fell all the way to the 4th overall pick. In which case, we lost out on the number 1 overall pick, which I was, myself and a lot of fans were truly hoping for the number 1 overall pick because one of 2 things could happen. We would take the best player in college football, or we could have, hopefully, a bidding war that would then land us a haul. Now, you want to talk to me about the merits of whether that bidding war would have worked? I don't know, but again, that could have happened, right? So that's why, again, the state of the Patriots has just been a massive. We're done. The dynasty is officially over. That dagger has gone through the hearts of one Patriot place, and we are on to hopefully better things, but it's going to take a lot. And then the last thing that I do want to talk about is, of course, who should be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. The coaching search has begun. The contenders basically is Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson. Now, I've been on the Ben Johnson train for a very long time. Why? Because of Drake May, because of Ben Johnson's innovativeness at the offensive coordinator position, and he gets it. He knows how to work with quarterbacks. Look what he did with Goff. I mean, the dude I was bashing when he was out in LA. You know, the reports of Sean McVay having to, you know, talk to the kid all the way up until that point where the microphone cuts off at the 15-second mark. You know, and just how he played in the Super Bowl outside of that great throw that Jason McCourty, blew up on Brandon Cooks that saved the Patriots that Super Bowl. Outside of all of that, yeah, I mean, Jared Goff sucked. He was a bum. Now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Obviously, you still have Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, but Goff is definitely a top 10 quarterback, if not number 5 right now with the way he's playing. So that's why I've been wanting Ben Johnson. Mike Vrabel is also a guy I would love to have as well. I mean, Mike Vrabel is just a football coach through and through. He is one tough SOB. He gets it. He led the Tennessee Titans to the AFC Championship with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. Now, everybody that I hear that's in opposition to Mike Vrabel is talking about exactly that. You know, that they were a very run-heavy team. That does Vrabel know how to work the offense like that? And in which I would say he had Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback and Derrick Henry as his running back. If you're a smart head coach, you're going to rely on your best players. You're not going to put the ball in Ryan Tannehill's hands to win the game. Like, you're not. That's a Derrick Henry job right there. But that's where, you know, his time with Cleveland this past season as an offensive assistant, I think, you know, could really benefit him. But again, talk about a guy who's been through it all. He coached in college at his alma mater in Ohio State. He was in Houston as the DC. He was the head coach of the Titans for a handful of years. And I think the only reason why they fired him was because he didn't get along with the owner. He pissed them off, and especially when he received his red jacket during the bye week, during Tennessee's bye week. And he came here to Foxborough to receive the jacket. I mean, it just fell into place. It was perfect. But to me, it's very interesting because I love both of them for two very different reasons. You know, Mike Vrabel is just a football coach through and through. The dude gets it, played in the league. I think he has that ability to build the culture and build, you know, what could be the next Patriots dynasty. I'm not saying that we're going to win 6 in 20 years, but I'm just saying, you know, that culture that really means something, the Patriot way, right? Versus Ben Johnson, who is the innovative head coach, who is the innovative offensive head coach, where we're not going to have to worry about a young offensive coordinator coming in, working with Drake May, making him look good for a year, 2 tops, and then that offensive coordinator gets a head coaching position somewhere else, and we have to go find another OC, like another. That was really the beauty of the Patriot dynasty, was that we never had that issue, truly, because it started off with Belichick and Charlie Weiss as the OC. Then it was Josh McDaniels during where Brady became Brady from 2007. Then McDaniels gets the Denver job, and I want to say 2009. And then Billy O'Brien becomes the OC from 2009 or 2010 to I think around 2012, 2013. And then McDaniels comes back and is with New England all the way up and through Mac Jones. So really, we've had 3 offensive coordinators during a 20-year span. Now it's this offensive coordinator is getting plucked, that OC is getting plucked, that OC. Like, NFL teams now are going after offensive coordinators. So even though I said that, yeah, the state of the Patriots is that we've had 5 OCs in 5 years, you know, if Mike Vrabel is the guy, that number could go up drastically. Okay, and listen, I'm not saying that that's the knock to hiring Mike Vrabel, but with Ben Johnson, you know it's going to be consistent. You know that whatever Ben Johnson's scheme is, that those are the guys he's going to go after in terms of hiring, and then it's going to remain the same for Drake May. You know, that is going to be crucial for Drake May. And when it comes to this hiring cycle for the Kraft family, now I want them to actually do their due diligence. And part of the rule that was just implemented was the fact that you cannot interview coaches. You cannot interview coaches in person until after the divisional round or until January 20th, when their season ends, if they're still employed by a team. Meanwhile, what do the Crafts do? They go out and interview Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton yesterday. Yeah, they interviewed both of them yesterday to satisfy the freaking Rooney Rule. And I've said this time and time again. I understand the Rooney Rule. I do. But I think it's outdated. I think it needs to be changed. Not so that you have to force owners to either interview or hire. And again, if you're asking me how I'm going to change it, I don't know off the top of my head. I really don't. But it just, right now, as it stands, so many teams, whether it's real or not, whether it's, I should say, open or not open, are able to skirt around the Rooney Rule so easily. Now, if you told me that the Crafts were doing a Zoom interview with Brian Flores and Aaron Giles of the Lions, then okay, like I get it, because then I think even still, they, in order to satisfy the Rooney Rule, they would have to wait to interview them in person. Okay, that makes sense, right? You do that, you go through it. They're legitimate candidates for a head coaching job, so it makes sense. You're not sitting there questioning, oh, well, was this a fake interview? You know what I'm saying? Whereas interviewing in person, Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton, those scream fake interviews. Why? Because Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton have not been in the NFL in 2 years. 2 years. They've been out of the league. 2 seasons. It's kind of a big deal. And so now they're legitimate candidates to work for on the offensive side of the ball. That's what they are. If I don't know why they would do this, I think it would be absolutely ridiculous. But if they were interviewing these two as offensive coordinators, you're really going to bring in Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel and say, here's your offensive coordinator? No, they're going to hire their guys, whoever they want. But that's why I've said this time and time again. It shouldn't be about the minority status. It should be about who's the best candidate. And not for nothing, Brian Flores is one of the top candidates. He even said he wants to be interviewed by the Patriots, except the Patriots need to go call into him. And I agree with that. It should be like that. It shouldn't matter, what race you are or anything like that. It should matter, are you the right person for the job? Can you get the job done? Like, I don't understand why that's so hard. Now, again, if you want to tell me that, some of these guys are purposely going out of their way not to interview them, then yes, I think that's an awful thing, because the career that Brian Flores has had and especially what he did in Minnesota this season absolutely deserves him some recognition in terms of getting interviews for a head coaching position. No doubt about it. The only thing I would say with Flores, though, is explain to me the Miami situation. Explain to me the why Tua, went to the head coach or owner, wanted him gone, fired him, and then there was some fallout that was really bad in terms of how he treated players, stuff like that. So I would just want his side of the story and how he would explain it. But then, even Detroit, Aaron Giles, like, look at what Detroit has been. I mean, the way that they just attacked Minnesota on Sunday and the amount of stops they got in the red zone was wild. Like, that defense was flying around. He absolutely deserves some recognition in terms of interviews and a potential head coaching position. Without a doubt. So again, it shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, it shouldn't matter. It should matter, are you the right person for the job? Do you have the resume to get the job? And I think that's why a lot of people were didn't say anything with Jerod Mayo, because the Patriots didn't even interview anybody when they hired Jerod Mayo. They didn't. They did zero due diligence. And so, maybe people were like, well, hey, at the end of the day, they hired a minority candidate. That's also awful to say, right? So it's like, we need to call everything down the middle. Heck, I feel like it's like I could go on and on, but sometimes, you just got to know when to stop. At the end of the day, what the Crafts did in terms of bringing in Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton yesterday, because now there are talks of Mike Vrabel interviewing tomorrow in person because he's not employed by Cleveland anymore, so he can interview in person. There are talks circulating that they could finalize a deal tomorrow, which again is insanity. If Mike Vrabel gets hired tomorrow, I am going to bash the Crafts just like I've bashed the Crafts for hiring Jerod Mayo and all this stuff, because you can't do that twice. They blatantly skirted the Rooney Rule because they're like, well, hey, Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton, they check the boxes. Like, it would just be an absolute joke, not only for the Rooney Rule, but it would be a joke for them to go out and interview in person. Oh my God. I've been saying it time and time again. The offensive coordinator for the Lions, Ben Johnson. Holy cow. That was brain fart city right there. But with Ben Johnson, like, if you're not going to even interview him or in person, you're doing your team and your organization a massive disservice. They love bringing people in that they have these relationships with. Guess what? They also have a relationship with Brian Flores. So why not bring him in? Just to see kind of, all right, how does he run the team? How does he run an organization? How would he change the culture here? Like, it's these types of things. Doing your due diligence is the reason that we're sitting here on January 8th, 2025, with a 4-13 team that blew the chance to have a number one overall seed. Meanwhile, we're 5 years removed from having the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, and he walked and won a Super Bowl. And Robert, if you're so pissed about Brady winning the Super Bowl in Tampa, why the hell haven't you done anything about it? You've been your same cheap ass that you have. Okay, fine. You spent in 21. You got Hunter Henry. Who else did you get? Jonnu Smith. He loves playing for that other team. All right, you could give Matthew Judon. He did good here until he got hurt and then whined and bitched and complained in front of Jerod Mayo because Jerod Mayo wanted him to speak like men. I'm talking to these guys like men, not like Bill would. Bill doesn't talk to these guys like men. I will. Yeah, well, Matthew Judon bitched and complained right in front of the cameras, and we ended up getting a third-round pick for it. So, not mad about the third-round pick, but that's not a good way to start your training camp. Is to have one of your best edge rusher want more money, even though he got hurt the previous season, and then openly flaunt it, right? So it's just been, it really has been one of the biggest tumultuous seasons I think I've ever seen, not only from a Patriots team, not only from a Boston team, but I mean, hell, any team. And, you know, just for one final point, Elliot Wolf is not long for New England. I am almost certain of that. After listening to Robert Kraft's press conference, I am almost certain of that. Because especially if we bring in a Mike Vrabel or a Ben Johnson, they know who they want. They have game planned for this for a very long time. And that's why, and then Robert Kraft saying, well, that, you know, the next guy is going to have his say on who comes in. He didn't specify who comes in terms of the GM role. But you're telling me that if Mike Vrabel comes in, that Robert Kraft's going to say, hey, get along with Elliot Wolf? Not after what Mike Vrabel went through in Tennessee and how the name is on the top of my tongue. But regardless, whoever the GM was, and they traded A.J. Brown. You could see Mike Vrabel openly pissed off that they traded A.J. Brown, their best receiver. And so there's no way in hell that if Vrabel gets hired here, that he's going to be open to being partners with Elliot Wolf. He's going to bring in his own guy. It's that simple. Not to mention that Elliot Wolf, to Fox Sports, had the brilliant idea to say, we're 3-13, so not good enough. Let's start there. We had a lot of needs. I would say that, I guess, personally, what I was expecting, maybe a little bit more internal development, which is a good lesson, certainly heading into next year, and that you can't always rely on that. Elliot Wolf said, he continues to say, quote, the rookie receivers didn't have it really that much for us. And, you know, Polk was sort of, in our estimation, a plug and play. Ultimately, to answer your question, our record speaks for itself. We didn't do enough. To say that Jalen Polk was a plug and play guy, and to throw the coaching under the bus like that, where, well, the way we had it, he should have played right away, and he should have been very good right away. And that you're blaming the coaching staff rather than, I don't know, take accountability for your actions. Take accountability that you are the same drafters as Bill Belichick, who don't know how to draft a wide receiver to save their lives. Hell, I was a scout for the Florida Gators. I was a recruiting assistant for the Florida Gators watching film. I did it for 2 seasons. And guess what? I've been removed now for almost 6 years. And I can still scout and pick a better NFL receiver than every single bum that they call in the front office. Not to mention, the other reason why he should be fired is for his O-line. He brought in Chukwuezefor, who then ultimately quit on this team. That's right, quit. And then he goes on to draft the Penn State offensive lineman, who's a predominant right tackle, and says, no, we'll throw him at left tackle. He'll be fine. You know, even his comments from training camp.
And I think we have the pieces in place to be able to compete.
We have the pieces in place to be able to compete. Really? Really, Elliot? Tell me, how good were we in our O-line play? That's right. We sucked. You know, guys like Elliot Wolf remind me? Nerd! That's right. Thank you, Ogre. He's a nerd. He doesn't care. They don't watch film. They don't understand how to watch film. They just see the stats. They look over, you know, the exact numbers, whatever the numbers are, and they're like, no, that's going to be a good player. When that is not the case. Not the case. The reason, so Gerard Mayo got fired, and Elliott Wolf will get fired. I understand why they're keeping him only because draft season is coming up. Once the draft is over, then usually that's when the front office turnover happens. But I mean, Elliott Wolf and the front office, they all need to go. We need to clean house completely. And Robert Kraft also mentioned too that, Elliott Wolf changed the scouting system. Really? Like, you probably didn't change it that much, because all you did was still draft the same players that you would have drafted under Bill Belichick. And don't give me this Drake May was easy nonsense. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Drake May was easy, excuse me. Don't give me this Drake May was not an easy decision nonsense. That's what I should have said. Don't give me this Drake May was not an easy decision, because he was. He was. It was 3 quarterbacks. Sure, you had Joe Alt and Marvin Harrison Jr. there that were being thrown around, but the only reason why they were being thrown around is because we had a lot of needs, and especially at the offensive side of the ball. So, yeah, who do you go with? You're the quarterback, the wide receiver, or the offensive lineman. At the end of the day, you go with the guy who's holding on to the ball a hell of a lot longer than any other player on that field. It's the quarterback. It was Drake May. Drake May was obviously the third choice. Williams, Daniels, May, in that order. So, the state of New England, man, God, what a far fall from grace. And obviously had a lot to say about it tonight. I want to thank you all for sticking with me here, because it's been a really interesting season, to say the least. I mean, there's really no two ways about it. It wasn't an easy, clear-cut decision. It was Robert Kraft did zero due diligence when hiring Gerard Mayo after firing Bill Belichick. Gerard Mayo was wildly incompetent at the head coaching position, at least in this stage of his career. He did not have the resume to back it up with, with being the next head man. Hell, he never even called a defensive game in his life. He was just the assistant. That was Steve Belichick. And then we're looking at the state of this team. To go from a dynasty, 6 championships in 18, 19 years, to then letting the greatest quarterback of all time walk, to watch just the steady decline, and then bam, off a cliff. And I thought after Belichick in 2023, I thought that was the cliff. I didn't realize there was that cliff was much, much deeper. I could not believe it as this season went on. So, yeah, I mean, and now is Robert Kraft going to actually do his due diligence? Are they going to wait this process out, or are they going to panic? And are they going to hire the guy that they have a very strong relationship with in Mike Vrabel? It's not to say that I'm not a Mike Vrabel guy. I would love to have Mike Vrabel. I just want the Krafts. If they keep talking like, hey, we are the stewards of the New England Patriots for the fans, right? If that's what they want to claim, then do your job, Robert and Jonathan. Do your job. Do your due diligence to make sure that the guy you select is the right man for the job. That's what I'm trying to get at. That is the ultimate point of this show, which ironically is the point that made a dynasty for 20 years. So once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Boston Sports Summit, episode number 41. I am your host, Tim Burnett. Thank you guys to all my commenters out there. Please, if you haven't, like, share, subscribe. You can stay up to date with all my thoughts on X right there at Boss Sports Summit. You can also see my stories, kind of what's going on at Boston Sports Summit on Instagram. You can see some of my live videos that I do when breaking news comes down. Also, you give a follow on YouTube, but don't forget to give a like, share, subscribe. Right, where is it? Oh, there we go. Right over here, the Grid Network's YouTube channel, which is where we go live every single Wednesday. They got a ton of great content. The co-founder of the Grid Network commented, he runs the All Even podcast, which is a great show. So tune in. Thank you, Barry, for watching and commenting. And again, thank you guys so much. I mean, I couldn't be here without you. And, it's been a great 2024. We're about to hit our 1-year anniversary. Can't believe it's already been a year. So thank you guys. It's all because of you. So really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. God bless, and have a great rest of your week, everybody.